The fine arrived without warning, taped to the mailbox like a public accusation, $5,000. Due in 10 days. No explanation that made sense. Daniel had lived on that quiet street for years, fixing his fence, greeting neighbors, never once causing trouble. But that morning, the HOA president decided his mailbox was suddenly non-compliant. Too tall. Wrong color. Facing the road at the wrong angle. The letter promised consequences if the fine wasn't paid immediately. What it didn't say was why this felt personal. Neighbors watched from their windows as Daniel read the notice again and again. The HOA president, Linda, had been walking the street more often lately, clipboard in hand. Eyes sharp with authority. She had fined others before, but never this high. Never this fast. Daniel felt the weight of something bigger than a mailbox. What no one knew yet was that this fine would crack open years of hidden power, secret control, and one mistake Linda would regret forever. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't call. He quietly took the letter inside, already planning his next move, because this wasn't just about a mailbox anymore, and by the end of this story, the person who issued the fine would be the one in real trouble. Linda believed rules were power, and power was something she never planned to lose. As HOA president, she ruled the neighborhood like a courtroom, fines replacing fairness, warnings replacing conversation. The mailbox fine wasn't about safety. It was about control. Daniel requested a formal hearing, calm and respectful. Linda rejected it within minutes. She sent another notice instead, adding late fees and threatening liens. Her confidence grew with every email she sent. She assumed Daniel would fold, just like the others had, but Daniel wasn't panicking. He was documenting everything. Emails. Dates. Photos. Even the security footage showing Linda stepping onto his property without permission to inspect the mailbox herself. Each detail mattered. At the next HOA meeting, Linda stood in front of the board, announcing the fine proudly, using Daniel as an example. What she didn't expect was silence. No applause. Just uncomfortable shifting. Some board members had started to question her methods. Daniel watched from the back of the room, saying nothing. Letting her talk. Letting her dig deeper. Because the more confident Linda became, the more careless she grew, and the next step she took would cross a line that couldn't be ignored. The situation escalated when Daniel came home to find his mailbox gone, not damaged. Not knocked over. Completely removed. Linda claimed it was temporary enforcement. Daniel called the police, calm but firm. An officer arrived, listened carefully, and asked one question that changed everything. Did the HOA have written permission to remove private property? They didn't. The officer documented the scene, advised Daniel to file a report, and quietly noted Linda's name. That same night, neighbors started talking. Screenshots of emails circulated. Stories surfaced of fines, threats, and intimidation going back years. Linda tried to regain control by issuing another notice, accusing Daniel of harassment for involving law enforcement. That email became the final piece. Daniel forwarded everything to a lawyer who specialized in HOA abuse cases. What Linda thought was authority was starting to look like a pattern. And patterns attract attention. The kind that doesn't go away. By the end of the week, someone unexpected requested a full review of HOA actions. And Linda had no idea how serious that review would become. The audit began quietly. Financial records. Fine distributions. Enforcement patterns. Linda was asked to provide documentation for every penalty she had issued in the last 2 years. She struggled. Receipts were missing. Rules had been selectively enforced. Some fines had been deposited into accounts no one recognized. The board members who once supported her started asking questions she couldn't answer. Daniel was invited to give a statement. He didn't exaggerate. He simply told the truth. He described the mailbox, the fine, the removal, and the threats. He showed evidence. Calm. Organized. Unemotional. The investigators noticed something else too. Linda had accessed properties without notice. Entered yards. Removed items. All without legal authority. What began as an HOA dispute had now shifted into something much larger. Something Linda could no longer manage with emails and threats, and when the police returned, not for Daniel, but for her, the entire neighborhood realized this story was about to take a shocking turn. Linda was asked to step outside during a board meeting. The conversation was quiet but firm. Questions turned into warnings. Warnings turned into consequences. When she raised her voice, it only made things worse. The charge wasn't dramatic. It was simple. Unauthorized removal of property. Abuse of authority. Financial mismanagement pending further review. The officer read her rights while neighbors watched in stunned silence. Daniel stood across the street, not celebrating, not smiling. Just breathing. The mailbox had been replaced earlier that day, standing exactly where it always had. Perfectly compliant. Always had been. News spread fast. The HOA suspended all fines. The board dissolved temporarily. New leadership was promised. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt quiet again, but the biggest moment hadn't happened yet. Because Linda had one last realization waiting for her, and it came when she learned who had officially filed the complaint that triggered the investigation. It wasn't just Daniel, it was the city. Linda had ignored previous warnings from municipal offices about HOA overreach. Daniel's report simply connected the dots. The city had been watching. Waiting. And the mailbox fine gave them proof. Her arrest wasn't about one man. It was about years of unchecked power finally meeting accountability. The fine that was meant to scare someone into silence had done the opposite. Daniel received a letter days later. Not a bill. An apology. The city confirmed the HOA had violated multiple regulations. Restitution would be issued. Records corrected, neighbors began waving again. Smiling. Talking. The fear that once lived on that street quietly disappeared. And Linda? She was no longer in charge of anything, all because of a mailbox she should have left alone. The $5,000 fine was officially voided. The HOA president position was permanently removed from Linda's record. Daniel never wanted revenge. He wanted fairness. And in the end, fairness arrived quietly, through patience, proof, and one decision not to stay silent. The mailbox still stands today, a simple piece of metal that changed an entire neighborhood. Not because it broke rules, but because someone tried to use rules as a weapon. Power doesn't belong to titles. It belongs to those who stand their ground when something feels wrong. This story wasn't about an HOA. It was about knowing your rights. And refusing to be bullied into giving them up, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.